On this episode of Tell Us a Story.
It's the idea that if you are neurodivergent, your brain truly is wired differently. Executive function skills refer to the adult skills that we're expected to have.
Okay.
So if you're in my membership, you get access to all my courses. Where should I start? And I do have a little questionnaire to kind of help you figure out. So you access to all of my courses. Then there are weekly every week I just set a timer and that will fix it. That idea that, we all procrastinate.
I believe that is true. That they are not
Absolutely.
lazy, stupid, or broke. Let's wrap up because I'm probably going to jail.
My website is FBOM Coach. So it's EF for executive functioning, EF BOM, BOMB Coach.
Welcome to Tell Us a Story, the podcast by Belmont City Press, where entrepreneurs and sales professionals share their journeys, insights, and strategies for success. In each episode, our guests reveal how they've overcome challenges, established their brands, and leveraged their stories to promote their businesses so you can too. I'm Red Hilton, your host for this episode. Today I'm joined by Shannyn Schroeder, who's the executive function coach at fbombcoach.com. So, Shannyn, tell us a story.
Hi, Red. Thank you so much for having me today. As you mentioned, I am an executive function coach, and I help neurodivergent women improve their executive functioning skills so they can calm some of the chaos that they have in their lives.
Fabulous. If you could do me a favor first and just give us a couple of definitions. Executive function, maybe even neurodivergent, but just a couple of definitions sort of bring us to where you are.
Absolutely. Executive function skills refer to the adult skills that we're expected to have. So when, people talk about, I'm so over adulting, that's what we're talking about. The skills that require you to plan and prioritize and organize your life, staying on top of your to-do list, getting started on tasks, especially if you don't like them. I mean, everybody has a certain level of distaste for those things, but most people can make themselves do it. People who struggle with executive functioning really can't. Sometimes they can't make themselves start things even they do like. So their world is filled with chaos because they don't have these skills. The upside is that they are skills that you can improve. Like, it's not like you're just born with it or you're not. So with practice, and once you understand them and you learn some strategies, you can improve them. When I talk about neurodivergence, I'm talking about anybody whose brain functions differently. Most of the time, we're talking about people who have ADHD or on the autism spectrum, but it also includes things like people who are bipolar or suffer from severe anxiety or depression, because all of those mental health issues also have a huge impact on your ability to, manage your executive function skills.
Okay, thank you for that. So with that said, bring us to where you are and your story and how fbombcoach.com came to be and your
Certainly.
role.
So my story actually starts, 24 years ago with the birth of my first son, my first child. I have 3 kids, and all 3 of them have some flavor of neurodivergence. And I am a teacher. Before being a mom, I was a teacher. So I have training in special ed, gifted ed, English ed. I've done a little bit of everything. And so when I saw things like ADHD popping up in my kids, it was a natural fit for me. I know what to do. I knew how to help them build those skills. And I stayed at home with them. I was an at-home mom for years. And when I decided to go back to work rather than going back into the regular classroom, I started working as an executive function coach at a company. And when I first applied, I wasn't even really sure what the role was. I checked out their website, and then after getting it, a better understanding of things, because I didn't at the time I wasn't aware of the term executive functioning, right? It's still relatively new, like being bandied about normally. And so I went in for the interview, and she's like, "So what do you think about this?" And I'm like, "It really seems to me like you're just teaching life skills." And she's like, we are. And I said, okay, then I got this. And so I started working as an executive function coach, mostly for middle school, high school, college students, to help them get through school.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last couple of years, and I really love being a coach, it takes a lot out of you when you're doing one-on-one because you're juggling everything, right? Over the last few years, in my own life, women that I know, I was seeing many of them getting the later in life diagnosis, like, I'm 40, 50, 60, and it's like, I just figured out I have ADHD.
Wow.
And it's a lot. And part of that is, I think, more awareness. Definitely with everybody being at home during the pandemic and the explosion of TikTok, and then you have all these people just kind of sharing, this is what it looks like, and more people going, that sounds like me, and then going and getting the diagnosis.
Mm.
And it's awesome that they have this realization that they now understand kind of like why they are the way they are. Um, so there's that sense of relief, like, oh, it doesn't have to be this way, which is awesome. Then there's also the anger of, why the heck didn't anybody catch this, 30, 40 years ago, so that I could have been more successful, more able to handle things in life. And as I was watching more and more women kind of go through this, and knowing that there is more other than, okay, I have this label now, what do I do with it? And
Mm.
so I started looking into like writing a blog, and I'm like, is this really what I want to do? And like, I could write courses, create courses. The key thing for me is making it accessible for these women, because as an executive function coach that works for a company, I know it is hella expensive,
Yeah.
right? Whether you're doing it individually, or through a company, it costs a lot of money. And I know as a mom, if it was my kid and my kid needed that coach, I would go get another job. I would get that job to pay for that coach because my kid needed it. But I'm not going to do that for myself.
Mm.
And I think that is true for a lot of women. Like, they're not
Sure.
going to figure out how to make that happen. Even though they do
Especially if they're
need help.
getting this late in life a diagnosis, they have
Exactly.
not been in that position to have to care for themselves in that manner.
Right. And it's kind of like the thought process, well, I've made it this far, right? It's something's kind of working. And so for me, creating F-bomb coach, which is EF, like for executive functioning, also because I sometimes drop F-bombs.
I do love a good play on words. I'm just saying.
I try.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really wanted things to be accessible. So my blog is obviously free, and I post, blogs there 2, 3 times a week, sometimes a little bit more. And then once I had that established, I started a Facebook group, and the Facebook group is free. And so women can join
Mm-hmm.
and kind of have a support system where there's a lot of, they share ideas. I will, throw questions out there. And then it's not just me saying, here, do this. It's, here's an idea, but then, 2, 3 other people coming in saying, but I've tried this and I tried this. And so it really is kind of like a sense of community, because you're with people who get it. Like when you
Mm.
come in and say, my house is a disaster and I have no idea where to start and I'm totally embarrassed, nobody's going to shame you for it, because everybody knows what that feels like.
Mm.
And then from there, I've expanded to creating courses and a paid membership. Again, just to kind of take that knowledge that I have and, keep it low cost, but, and accessible to as many people as possible.
So talk to us about you've mentioned women, and
Mhm.
most of your courses are identified as, for women, and that's who you sort of speak to. Are they open to everybody?
Yes, my blog obviously is free, open to
Mm-hmm.
everybody. On my blog, you can access the individual courses to be able to buy them. Anybody who wants to buy a course can buy a course. My Facebook group and my membership are women only.
Okay. And that is, I'm assuming, to create sort of a soft place to fall and, sort of a
Absolutely. I
constant.
want it to be a safe place for women who are struggling with this. And it's not that I've got an issue with men. I don't hate men. But when you look at why so many women have not been diagnosed, a big part of that is because all of the testing and procedures historically have all been based on men.
Mm,
That's why boys would get diagnosed, but not girls.
mm.
So that it's not that there are no men who get a later in life diagnosis, but the numbers are completely disproportionate.
What
And women need, I think, that extra kind of safe space.
what are some signs that someone might say, "Hey, that sounds like me"?
Well, that's tough. Because you can actually, I mean, you can absolutely struggle with executive functioning and not be neurodivergent at all.
Sure.
Um, but if you're talking about the cross between the two, for women who have ADHD, more often than not, it's not, hyperactive, running around, bouncing off the walls. With women, it tends to be more internal. So it's that not being able to turn your brain off at night. Like you go to bed and it's not just, oh, I have insomnia. It's that you could be really, really tired, crawl into bed, and then just lay there because your brain is constantly running. Um, Not being able to sit still doesn't mean that you're literally bouncing in your chair, but it could be twirling the pen, tapping your toe, because there is that bit there. It is having a gazillion interests and dabbling in a lot of things, but not following through on a lot of things. Um, if you suffer from other mental health issues like anxiety or depression, obviously I can't diagnose any of that. I'm not a doctor.
Hmm.
Um, but the symptoms are things that, absolutely impact your life. If you truly cannot make a phone call because you are so nervous that picking up that phone cause you to break out in a sweat and your heart is palpitating, that's not normal, right?
Mm,
So I'm not saying like you have to run out and go get meds, but you need to be able to handle it. You need to be able to figure out how can I do this because like it or not, most of the time making a phone call, part of life.
mm-hmm.
Um, so um any of those kinds of things, when you're dealing with a mental health issue or any of the other diagnoses, it's going to impact how well you can handle those other adult skills like planning and prioritizing and organizing.
So I'm not gonna lie, you had me in the first half. I was like, "Is she hanging out at work with me?" But thankfully, when you got to the but doesn't follow up, I'm like, "Oh, okay, good." So I think in theory, we all have some of that. We all have these things that we don't like to do, or sometimes we experience. But you're talking, it's not just sometimes I go to bed and I can't fall asleep. This is a life altering, interrupting pattern that then
Yes,
people create workarounds for.
exactly. It's like everybody procrastinates,
Mm,
right? I would be hard pressed to find someone who never procrastinates, right? We
hmm.
all do it. But someone who struggles with executive function, they procrastinate to the point that it has a huge negative impact on their life, that they are always scrambling to try and catch up. They're always pulling the all-nighters to try and meet that deadline and stressing out about it. And it has a negative impact on other areas of their life. Whereas
Hmm.
most of us will procrastinate and we'll be like, oh, shoot, that deadline's coming up. I better get started, and we get it done, and it may be not as early as we would have originally liked, but we're not like really crushing ourselves. And
Hmm.
it's a cycle that people who struggle with executive functioning, it's a cycle they can't break. um when you talk about things like task initiation, yes, I don't want to do it. Do I want to go, clean my bathroom? No. Right. And I may put it off, and I may, be like, "Ugh, okay." But at some point, I'm going to be like, okay, this is gross, and I'm going to make myself do it.
Hmm.
If you are struggling with executive functioning, you really can't make yourself do it. So for people to say, oh, well, you just make yourself, you know, and that's one of the things that when I talk to women who are in my audience, like the one thing is that don't tell me to get a planner. Like that's always the number one thing. And it's always one of the first things I say is like, you're not going to want to hear this, but you need a planner. The difference is that I'm not going to tell you what planner you need. You have to figure that piece out. You need
Mm,
to, and they're like, well, it doesn't work for me. Well, you haven't found the right one,
mm,
because without a planner, How do you keep track of what you need to do? How
Mm-hmm.
do you remember your appointments? You don't. That's why you're always late and you miss appointments. And you know this, but it's like the constant frustration of, oh, I've spent, $200 on planners and they just sit collecting dust because I don't use them. Things like that. So it is that constant negative impact on your life. Not just like, oh, we're all a little bit this way. No, we're not all a little bit. We all may have some of those traits,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't negatively impact multiple areas of our lives.
Mm-hmm. What is the disconnect? And do you think it's nature or nurture?
It's both.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Because the nature neurodivergence, when you talk about someone who has ADHD, without getting super sciencey, because again, I'm not a doctor, but you have to understand parts of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So executive functioning is housed in the front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. And for people who have ADHD, it takes longer for that developed. So science has shown over the years, like we've always known girls mature faster than boys and things like that. And so it was always like for boys, when we talk about things like, oh, insurance rates for teenage boys are outrageous, right? Well, part of that is their impulsive nature. Not necessarily they're automatically bad drivers, but they're impulsive.
Mm-hmm.
That impulsivity controlled in the front prefrontal cortex.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always thought, oh, by the time they're 21, no, now we're finding science is saying that no, for the typical male, it's closer to 24, 25. If that male has ADHD, it's more like 26, maybe 27
Mm-hmm.
before it's really together the way it needs to be. And so part of it is absolutely nature. Like your brain is wired differently. You
Mm-hmm.
can't change that part.
Right.
Part of it is nurture. If you're diagnosed when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, and you have someone in your life who can say, this is how you work around the way your brain is wired. This
Mm-hmm.
is how you make life work. That part is nurture. And if you don't have that, then you spend your whole life scrambling, trying to figure out the pieces of how to make things work right for you.
Talk to me about your courses.
I have a pretty wide variety of courses. I have mini courses
Okay.
for each of the executive function skills, almost all of them.
How
They're
many
not
are
all
there?
yet. So I have one for task initiation. I have one for organization. I have one for planning and prioritization. I have one for time management. I will have one for emotional regulation, but it's not done
Mm-hmm.
yet. And when I say mini courses, these are truly mini.
Mm-hmm.
They're $11 each. There's only a couple of modules. Every video I give you is under 15 minutes because
Mm-hmm.
again, my audience does not have a great attention span. And so it needs to be something that they can sit through easily. And then there's a workbook that goes along with it. So I look it's not a deep dive into each of these. It's a broad overview. Like if you don't really understand what task initiation is, this is going to give you the insight of what it means for a typical person, what it looks like in a neurodivergent person, and then some quick strategies. So it's just, 2, 3, or 4 strategies that you could implement in your life for like quick wins.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have some bigger courses, building effective habits. I have one for mastering your inbox management because that is a huge thing for my people, having 40,000 unread emails in their inbox.
I just say start all over, delete them all, just start over.
Yeah, and sometimes that's exactly what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some bigger courses like that. Still not hugely expensive. We're still talking it under $30. So those are available for anyone, and I will be creating more. So as I create them, then I just go ahead and post them to my website. I don't typically do big splashy launches. At some point, I might. Not there yet.
Fabulous.
Other
Fabulous.
priorities,
I understand that. Yes, exactly. So all right, so those are your courses. You also have a membership. So walk me through what that looks like and what people experience with the membership. And you said this is for women only, the membership.
Yes, my membership is women only. In my membership, first, you get access to all of my courses, absolutely everything. So as I create new things, they get dropped in the membership automatically. You never have to buy anything separate because who needs to deal with all of that?
Okay.
So if you're in my membership, you get access to all my courses, and then you can kind of pick and choose how you want to go about doing things. Like, where should I start? And I do have a little questionnaire to kind of help you figure out, like, what is the executive function skill that is your worst one, kind of thing. So that might help you decide, let me start here. So you access to all of my courses. Then there are every week I drop an additional resource. Most of the time it's like, here's a printable. So here's a printable checklist for cleaning your bathroom. Here is, a printable for, like creating outfits for the week, like for your wardrobe, just so that you're taking that decision paralysis away. Other times I have like a Google sheet, and I create a video to go along with it, just to explain, like, this is how you use it. So if you're someone who prefers digital assets, I have those. I will be implementing, I don't have any in there yet, kind of like a video review of different apps that might be beneficial.
Okay.
And then you get 2 group coaching calls a month. So the first group coaching call a month is themed. So every month I have a different theme. So one month might be task initiation, one month might be emotional regulation, one month might be imposter syndrome. And so for that call, you can show up and we're going to talk about what that topic is, what resources are in the membership that might help you work through that. And then the second group call every month is an AMA. Ask me anything. You can literally show up and you can ask whatever you want, and I will do my best to help you work through it.
Where do these calls happen? Is this on Facebook?
It's on Zoom.
On Zoom. Okay. So in the Ask Me Anything, break it down. You say ask me anything. What generally do you feel, is there a common through line to a lot of the questions people have? No.
Nope. I get people who come in and sometimes they will ask, questions about their business and structuring their business and kind of getting things organized, or what direction to take their business. And I don't approach it as like, I'm not a business coach, but as an objective observer on the outside, I can kind of see, here are the pieces. This is what I'm hearing you say. You say you want this, but you're doing all of this, And so I kind of bring that back and say, if this is what you want, this is the way you do it, to kind of help them, pull that path. Sometimes it is more of a personal thing, like where they're feeling defeated and like, I've tried all of this and I feel like a total failure. And then, so then we talk about, how do you pull yourself out of that? How do you stop that cycle of thinking? Because obviously that doesn't help you. It just makes everything worse. So I really do it runs the gamut of everything, that when you look at all the different ways your executive functioning touches your life, those are all the different kinds of questions that I might get.
Interesting. So you have your courses, you have your membership, and all of this can be obtained through your website, correct?
Yes.
Excellent. What is a common misconception that you often find yourself maybe not coaching your clients on? Because, you can offer that as well, but maybe just in general to people outside of your clientele, a common misconception that they may have.
That you can just stop being that way. Like I said, for people who are like, oh, well, you're always late, just set a timer and that will fix it. That idea that, oh, well, we all procrastinate, so that doesn't really make you different. It's the idea that if you are neurodivergent, your brain truly is wired differently. You can't just say, use a planner, that's going to solve your problems. You need other methods, you need other tools, you need other strategies. And it's very frustrating for anybody who is has any kind of neurodiversity to hear from someone who is neurotypical and to tell them, well, just do this. Like, there is a, magic pill that's just going to fix everything. Because chances are really good they've tried that. They've done so many of those things that people have told them to do, and it didn't work, because most of those things are designed for the neurotypical brain.
I was just going to say for the neurotypical. So as a neurotypical who has a neurodivergent person in their lives, what are the questions we could be asking?
Man, we could probably go on for hours here.
Well, we'll
If,
start.
if you live with someone who is neurodivergent,
Mm-hmm.
it's really important, I think, first and foremost, to spend some more time listening rather than talking. Because just because you see something in their lives and you're like, no, but that's the wrong way to do it. And I say this as a mom who watched her children no, just do this, right? I'm a control freak. Or you're just going to tell them how to do it. My way works.
No, you're a mom. Yeah, there you go.
Right. And it doesn't. And so you create more conflict and you create a lot of bad feelings and resentment when it's just like, why can't you just? If you could remove that from your vocabulary, that is going to be huge because they can't just. They don't show up late to spite you. They don't forget appointments because they're inconsiderate. They really can't help it. Can they improve? Yes. If you want to help them, then help them by investigating other possibilities and not say, here, why don't you just? But hey, I heard about this. Some people say this works for, an ADHD person, or some people who suffer from anxiety tried this and it really works.
Can you give us an example of something that would be an alternative that might help someone?
Something that works really well for a lot of ADHD people, and it's going to sound silly I think, to a lot of neurotypicals, body doubling. Body doubling just means having another person in the room doing something when you need to get something done. So some of us, like if you have worked from home, if you've, done a lot of Zoom things like co-working, where it's like y'all get on a call and you're all doing your own thing, but you're all working. And for a lot of people with ADHD, body doubling, if they can't like clean their room, like their room is a disaster and they know they need to do it, but they just can't get started. Just having someone in the room with them, not talking to them, not helping them, just having another person there, oftentimes they can just get through it. They will actually start and get it done, and it's not a big deal. And it seems silly because why can't you just go in your room and clean it? I just lost your sound. You're muted.
Do you have any idea why that works?
That I don't know. I bet that there is some neuroscientist out there who might know, but I'm not that person. I don't know why that works, but it does for a lot of people.
Okay. What is your Monty? So at Belmont City Press, Monty is our mascot, and he is all things a beacon of, inspiration and lessons that we can learn. So what is your Monty that you can share with our listeners today?
My Monty is being neurodivergent does not mean that you are lazy, stupid, or broken.
Okay.
And those are all things that my audience has heard or felt their entire lives.
That they're lazy, stupid, or broken.
Yep.
Okay. So I believe that is true, that they are not
Absolutely.
lazy, stupid, or broken. And I think that, you are shedding a light on something that I don't want to say it's new and different, but if women are getting diagnosed in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, it is new and different. And I can see how perhaps, 40, 50, 60 years ago, if someone didn't want to take the time to deal with someone else's problems, it would have been very easy to say you're being lazy or you're being stupid or you're broken and blaming the person as opposed to slowing down. And I think that's where, the education system or, society, we have it set up that these are the expectations. And when you're outside of those expectations, nobody wants to take the time to figure out how to create a sub box for other people.
Absolutely, because there is, like, when you look at the education system, there is that box of here's special education.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't fit exactly what that box was supposed to be, you talk ADHD 40, 50 years ago, that's the hyperactive 7-year-old boy. That's
Mm,
how everybody visioned it. And so if that wasn't you, well, then you're not ADHD.
mm,
And that's where like the shift in perspective comes in, is that now that we're really looking at it, and once you have the realization that most of the tests that we're testing for that were based on men, they didn't take women into consideration at all. Um, so it really is an entire shift of a lot of things.
mm. Let's spend a moment getting to know the Shannyn behind the Shannyn. I am going to give this our rapid fire section. I'm going to give you a choice and you pick one. All
Okay.
right. So let me know. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Introvert or extrovert?
Way introvert.
It's funny. And people that say that, I consider myself an introvert. I don't know if I could line 5 people up to agree with that. I think how we perceive ourselves and how other people perceive us is just very different. But
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
so
But I
funny.
am absolutely, like, I'm someone, once I've peopled for an entire day, like, don't bother me for the next two.
Fabulous. Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Okay. That's ice cream or cake?
I'm gonna go ice cream.
Really? Okay. All right.
I'm not
Okay.
much of a cake person. I love to bake, but I don't actually eat it.
Yeah, I don't bake, but I will eat it. So I feel like we could be roommates.
We could be right
I
friends.
feel like there's something there. Hot or cold?
Hot.
Like weather?
Yeah.
Really? Like hot weather?
Oh, I live in Chicago. I will
Yeah.
take 90 degrees in the summer over minus 30 in the winter any
I mean,
day.
-30 is chilly. I'll give you that. But I don't know. Maybe as I get older, I just know. It's not the heat, it's the humidity. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to that.
I do understand that.
Yeah, yeah. I probably could deal with the heat without the humidity. All right. So our guest to guest question. As you know, the guest before you left behind a question for you to answer during our show today. So are you ready for your guest to guest question?
As pretty as I'm gonna get.
There you go. Name a movie you have seen that had an effect on you.
That is such a hard question. It really is. Um, wow. Um, I'm going to say Wizard of Oz.
No?
And this is going to seem a little bit weird. Um,
But go on.
but I'm old, you know? And I mean, I grew up in a time when Wizard of Oz was one of those movies that you could catch on TV like once a year.
Once a year. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
everybody would sit and watch it because it was such an awesome movie.
Yeah.
Um, um, for me, and there's a lot in the movie that, is messy and I don't really get. Um, but that sense of home and family and what that means,
Mm,
I think has always been really important. Like, I did not have a great childhood, as many of us did not.
mm,
Um, but for me to create for my own children, um, kind of like a safe, secure home life, um, that is really made up of found family more than blood family,
mm-hmm.
um, which I think is kind of like where the Wizard of Oz is. Like, there's a lot there, and it's not all about blood family. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, she doesn't even have mom and dad around.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I would say that Wizard of Oz is one of those movies that if it was on, that I would always kind of like just plop down and I'm gonna watch it, even though I've seen it, 100 times.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. It's a little bit different than my answer.
And what is yours?
Well, Boondock Saints. So it's a little different. A little different.
A little?
Just it's a little different, is all I'm saying. And and it could be because it takes place in Boston, which is where I am. But even if it didn't, if it took place in Chicago, I still would be like, yeah, that's a job I want. Yeah. Which
I remember going to see that movie in the theaters.
I've seen it 5,000 times. I probably could act it out for you if you ever run out of TV. Absolutely. Can you imagine? That's just such an excellent job. All right. Well, I'm probably going to have the police at my door in a minute or two. So let's wrap up because I'm probably going to jail. Your website, one more time, and spell it out for us. We will have it in the show notes, but just because it is a play on words, my friend.
It is. My website is FBOM Coach. So it's EF for executive functioning, EFBOM, BOMB coach.com.
Fabulous. And you have your courses, you have your membership, you have information there. And are you on other social medias as well?
Not right now. I may be. I as I've built my business, I just keep adding more things. So I started the blog and then I added the Facebook group. So I have my private Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
I now have a podcast based on my blog. So all my blog posts are in audio in a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I may add other social media. I'm just not there yet.
I understand. What is your parting thought for our listeners today?
My parting thought is no matter where you are in life, you're never too old to learn, to improve on the skills you have.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate the information. Certainly learned a lot today. I appreciate your time. It's extremely valuable, and I hope I honored that here today.
You absolutely did, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. To our listeners, if you have a story to share, visit tellasastorypodcast.com. If you're an aspiring author, a seasoned business owner, or looking to elevate your personal brand, visit belmontcitypress.com for expert advice on writing your own success story. Trust the next chapter because you are the author. Now, tell us a story.